Dennis. Welcome back to the Montreal International Auto Show. We're heading into the last weekend, another weekend to get a look at all the vehicles that are here. We're going to focus today on technology and some of the latest innovations in the automobiles. I'm joined by columnists Miranda Lightstone and Mathieu St. Pierre. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get right to our first subject. We're going to talk about some of the latest innovations. I'm going to show you pictures of the Ford Edge, which has two things which are fantastically convenient, one of which I thought should have existed a long time ago, but they did it first. First is park assist. So you get up to a spot and you don't feel you have the necessary skills to parallel park. Don't worry, the Edge will do it for you. We're going to explain why, and this is fantastic. This is the trunk assist. Just with the kick of a foot, the trunk will open and close, and anybody who has walked to their car with a load full of groceries will appreciate not having to get the keys out of your purse or your pocket. So let's start first with some of the innovations. Let's talk about park assist. First, explain to me how it works.
Park assist is actually fairly simple. A lot of the cars now have a series of sensors located all around the car, and there are specific instructions. You have to pull up near a parking spot. The sensors will measure the available space, and then we'll give you instructions as to what to do to have the car aid you in parking the vehicle. So it'll ask you to put it in reverse, and all you have to do is apply throttle, and the steering will be done on its own.
Please don't touch anything.
That's right, exactly.
You watch it turn.
That's
It's a bit Exorcist-like.
It is, yeah. Most cars have electric power steering, so there's a servo in there that is computer controlled that will do all that work. All you got to do is brake when it tells you to brake, and then put it in park, and that's it.
Do you feel that there's a trend now where it used to be power and it still is fuel efficiency, but now these little innovations like the kick trunk are things that they're trying to catch your eye with, making your life simpler? Do you notice that as being a trend?
Yeah, for sure. Just like our smartphones do everything for us, why can't our cars do everything for us? They want you to be kind of as at home as possible in the cars and to not think. Our cars are doing so much more for us.
We're getting lazier and lazier.
We are.
That's what that means.
I don't even feel like asking you the next question.
I'm leaving. I'm done.
But are there any innovations that are specifically catching your eye that you've seen coming out?
Well, I think we're going to touch on the subject, but like driverless cars, it's a series of all types of technologies that are active. Those are becoming more increasingly popular in cars. And I mean, there's some really good things to say about that and some very negative things to say about that as well.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's talk about driverless cars right away, because when you talk about driverless cars, there's one company that is starting to corner the small market that there is, and that is Google. We're going to have a look now at the Google driverless car, not the Google-less. So here it is. It's taking pictures, which are the images you will find on Google Maps, and there is no driver. So in you go, lots of legroom, I guess, because you're not accessing a gas, brake, or a steering wheel. Now, how does it work? It's also done navigation by computer. So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, how does the car know what it's doing?
It's all Google's data, right? It's using Google Maps and it's using lasers to guide itself on the street so it can see where it's going. It's seeing the cars in front of it, beside it, behind it. It's seeing the lanes on the road, and it's keeping its distance. It's not going to hit the car in front of it. It's not going to, drift and whatnot.
The principle is actually very simple. You just want a driverless car, but the amount of data that the car's sensors has to pick up, compute, figure out what to do is enormous.
Yeah.
It's quite an adventure. I've been in a few driverless cars, and some of them have programmed routes, so it's a little bit of a cheat. But like in the case of the Google car, I mean, they have planned out routes. Sorry. So I mean, the car is driving itself, but through a series of predetermined inputs. Before a car actually becomes driverless, and that we are actually able to drive them or be driven in them, there's going to be a series of updates in the infrastructure of our streets, and the cars will have to start to communicate with each other. It's going to be very complex, and it's going to take a long time before we actually get there.
Because if there's a change in the road or a change in an intersection or
somebody decides to cut you off or a human error.
Yesterday, the car needs to know today.
Exactly.
Right.
2 seconds ago.
2 seconds
Because
ago.
it has to be able to preemptively decide on what may or may not happen. So there will be a series of variables. There's a pedestrian. Is the pedestrian going to go? Should I wait? Do I go? What's the light say?
Does the pedestrian have to show up the day before?
Exactly.
Last week, and then they go, okay, now I know what I'm going to do.
What about traffic signals, stop signs?
It can see it all, and that's the beauty of that technology, is that it is trickling down into technology that we see today in the cars, but like Subaru's EyeSight or any of the head-up, the front laser-guided cruise control, all those little things that are used in the self-driving cars.
In fact, a lot of cars today are quote-unquote driverless, or they're able to be you don't have to drive them. They will drive themselves.
They will drive you to an extent. You can take your hands off the wheel on a Mercedes, and it will keep you in the lane.
That's right, but it'll only do that for a short period of time because it's not collecting enough data in order to continue along.
And you shouldn't take your hands off the wheel.
Now, I have to ask this question because I'm not somebody who's a sports driver, but I love driving. I love long distance driving and touring.
So
I
do
like
we.
pulling off and getting my coffee. And where's the fun in having
There's
a
not.
driverless car?
It's
She'll answer
horrifying.
there's
It's
no fun.
horrifying. There's no fun. I mean, just take a bus, in my opinion. Like, why have a car at all? I mean, to have a car is to drive and to enjoy it. But if you don't like it and you want to just
And
get
I guess
from
as
point A-
automotive journalists, you sort of close the door and just
I
sit
just don't. Yeah, we
there.
try not. Honestly, like you said, it's a subject that we just kind of go, okay. It's,
I'm praying for at least 25 to 30 years before it becomes mainstream. So by then, I will be retired. So I'm good.
Rocker.
What are they
Shotgun.
saying? Are they giving a timeline for what's realistic?
Well, realistically speaking, it's like the right now, like the recharging stations,
Right.
right? If you go back 100 years, fuel stations, it's the implementation of the network that will take a while. So before it's actually fully functional, where people will not drive at all, it's going to take a long time and a heck of a lot of investment.
say driverless cars, I think, are going to kill off a couple of really popular cars. So I think manufacturers are going to fight them a lot.
An
Cars
ironic
that you
choice of
want to
words.
drive.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, no, because cars that you want to drive and want to be driven, they're not going to turn into autonomous
Right.
cars.
Okay, well, you mentioned fueling up and you mentioned charging stations, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about zero emission cars. Let's look at two of them right now. There, we're going to see the Leaf and the Volt. Now, we're going to talk about this in a second, but there are different types of zero emission cars. So this is the Leaf, first of all, and then we're going to look at the Volt. Now, both of these, of course, are EV electric vehicles, but there are some differences between them, and here is the Volt. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what is an EV.
An EV is an electric vehicle which runs on no fuel whatsoever. It may or may not include a range extending engine or generator, and that's what defines or differentiates the Volt from the Leaf. The Leaf is a 100% electric car with no range extension possible at the moment. So you recharge, it says 120 kilometers, that's your
That's
range.
as far as you're going.
You're done.
Yeah.
Whereas the Volt will give you, I think it's a 40 kilometer range on the batteries, but does have an internal combustion engine under the hood in the front of the car that requires fuel, which will extend your range. That engine will act as a generator,
battery.
That's right, charging the batteries and giving you more range.
So does the range on an electric vehicle also depend on your driving style? If you
Yes.
drive more aggressively, you won't go as far,
Yeah, we've
much
done
like with
this test
gas?
before. Yeah, we've done it a couple of times to EVs to see, and yeah, if you drive aggressively, you've got everything jacked, the radio, the heat, the steering, it's going to go down quite quickly.
In a very brief nutshell, I did a long road test with a Leaf. I did Montreal to Quebec City. And what would normally take 2.5 hours one way, 2.5 hours the other way, took me 12.5 hours because of recharging. But the point is that this was done.
Where did you recharge?
Well, there's a Circuit Electrique in Quebec, right? We have a number of charging stations between here and Quebec City.
Yep.
And they're about 50 to 70 kilometers apart. So you got to plan what you're going to do and how you're going to drive between the charging stations.
And how long did you stop for each time?
Depends. If it was a supercharger, it would take half an hour to 45 minutes. If it was a 240 volt charger, I did spend 6 hours waiting for my Leaf to charge. So I had a couple beers, a snack, read a book, wrote a
So it
story.
cost you nothing at gasoline, but it cost you $460 in motel bills.
Well, yeah, no, but that's another interesting point because I did a comparison with a similar car, a Honda Fit, and the amount of fuel it would have consumed on that road trip versus the amount of electricity the Leaf consumed and the cost, and they were almost identical.
See, that's interesting because electricity is not environmentally free, right?
No.
It's a misconception.
No, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. And it also depends, you were saying the difference between getting your electricity from a renewable source or if you're going to get your electricity from a carbon-burning, coal-burning
Nuclear,
factory,
yeah,
then you
something
aren't doing any
that's-
better.
Yeah, no, you're not. People think they're automatically green as soon as they buy an EV, but that's not necessarily the case.
No, in some cases, cradle to grave, the
Yeah.
car will actually consume more energy, require more energy than a normal.
Gas burning,
That's right, exactly, a Toyota
planet
Corolla.
killing.
Is
Yeah.
there somewhere you can go? Is there a resource you can use to compare EVs and see what you're getting?
Resource
Well,
Canada.
there's Natural Resources Canada.
Natural
They have an
Resources
Enter guide. It'll give you an idea of fuel consumption numbers, and then there are e-equivalents to fuel consumption. Like you get EMPGs in the U.S. and it'll tell you. I think the Volt has like an EMPG equivalent of 200 miles per gallon,
Right.
which is not. Which
really
is
that
added.
accurate 'cause they're not.
It doesn't really mean anything, but it means that. in theory, you are averaging that.
Just out of curiosity, are the charging stations, are there enough sort of across the country, across the Trans-Canada to be able to do that?
They're up the two coasts right now.
Okay.
I mean, the West Coast, Tesla has kind of taken over that one, and they're actually moving here to Quebec as well. They're going to have charging stations.
So if you're planning on touring the prairies, don't do it in EV.
Do it.
Buy a Tesla.
Yeah, buy a
Buy a
Tesla.
Because it's got the best range at the moment.
Or a train ticket.
Yes,
Yeah.
or a train ticket.
Okay. We're going to take a break from my asking you the questions. We did give the opportunity to some of our viewers to ask questions of our experts, and here's the first of two.
Ben moi, je chercherais une voiture qui a bien de l'espace en arrière pour les sièges d'auto puis tout, puis voir qu'est-ce qui serait le plus sécuritaire sur la banquette arrière justement pour les
Okay,
enfants.
so we're talking about child seats in the back seat of a car. So first of all, I know that I have two kids, and once you put two car seats in the back, it takes up a lot of space, and there is a lot of concern, of course, about safety, especially for new parents. So which cars have the space and which cars have the safety factor?
I'm working on getting kids, working on making kids. Miranda will answer because she has.
Make your way to a charging
Acquire,
station.
yeah, I have a 3-year-old son at home, and he comes in every single car that I bring home. So I'm quite a pro at installing and taking out baby seats. As far as safety goes in cars today, they're all approved. They all go through the crash testing. So the front, side impact, rollover, so you don't have to worry about that. As far as which ones will fit the baby seat, any car. And you can make any car a family vehicle, from a Scion FRS to a Suburban, which makes sense. A 911, you want to bring a 911 home for the kids to sit in?
You said that. You've actually done that,
I have
haven't
done
you?
that, yeah. I put a baby seat in the back of a 911, a few actually, and they
With a
fit.
baby?
With a baby, yeah. He was about a year old the first time he went in a 911.
Did he fall asleep?
He did, and then
It's like a hum. It's like the dryer.
pretty much. No, but you can, and you know what? Like I said, there's a bunch of baby seats in the market. They're all approved. You got to go. If there's a certain car that you want, go to the store, park outside, the door as close as you can, and just test baby seat after baby seat, because they all have the latch system. So 2 hooks on the bottom, 1 on the top. See if it fits.
Which makes it a lot easier than it used to.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's very easy to install too. The seats today are really well made, and they're really thought out.
Just very quickly to remind everybody, as secondary to the car probably is install your baby seat properly.
Yes,
The safest
go-
vehicle with a loose
yeah.
baby seat isn't going to do
You
you
can go to your
much
local
good.
police station, SQ or otherwise, and they'll show you how to do it. It's completely free. Just take 20 minutes to a half an hour and see how it's done. It is extremely important.
Absolutely. Okay, here's our next question, which talks about storage space.
Parce que, bon, les véhicules électriques ont tous des batteries, donc ce qui va affecter la capacité de chargement. Donc, pour la famille, si j'ai à aller porter mon fils au hockey, ma fille à son cours de ski tout de suite après, est-ce que je vais être capable de loger tout ça dans la valise, étant donné que la plupart des voitures électriques, les valises sont plus petites?
So I've heard this. I've heard some. I remember the old days of EVs where they'd say, "And there's room for your golf bag." But now, obviously, more people are becoming interested in EVs. So more people want to be able to put their stuff in the car.
Family EVs,
is that
yeah.
realistic?
It is actually. It depends on why or what was or how the car was conceived. Thank you. If the car, for example, the Ford Focus, that was conceived as a regular car with a gasoline-powered engine, and then they decided to make an EV version. So they had the only place they could put the batteries was in the trunk. So that explains why the trunk
That's
is
like we
smaller.
see with the Tesla behind us here, right? We
Well,
have the trunk in the
Tesla
front.
is the other example where the car was conceived as an electric car. So the batteries are actually part of the chassis. They're part of the structure of the car. So they do not encroach whatsoever on interior space. In fact, the Tesla has 2 trunks, one in the front and a huge one in the back.
Right. Well, that's it, because that's really a necessity now if you're going to pick up and your go. Do you find more and more EV manufacturers are starting to focus on the practicalities around their EV?
Yeah, because definitely people want to make their cars, not just a novelty item. They want to live with them. They want their families to go in them. Toyota really is the head of like hybrid cars at least. So they have batteries in them, but again, they're conceived as hybrid. So they've already placed the battery where it needs to be. So they have a lot of trunk space in the Prius V and C and the regular one.
And it's in the manufacturer's interests
Yes.
to make the transfer for us consumers from our internal combustion engine cars to electric cars
Yeah.
as seamless
Right.
as possible. So if there are compromises to be made on our behalf, we're going to be less likely to invest in a car that is typically, at the moment, far more expensive than an equivalent car that runs on fuel.
Because there are some people who will look at the niche market, but most of us are like me, where you walk in and you want a car that serves your practical purposes,
Correct.
and it's all fine, it's zero emissions, but if it causes me all sorts of other complications.
You're going to go to the one that you're used to and the one that works well,
Exactly, that's
despite being not as planet friendly.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you both very much for joining me today.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Okay.
us.
I want to remind everybody that the salon is on for today and the next 2 days. So for today and tomorrow, it is open from 10 a.m. until 9:30 p.m. So you have plenty of time to come after work. It is also open on Sunday from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. And if you want any information about tickets or schedules or what vehicles are here to see and what attractions there are, and yes, there is a daycare, you can get all that information on the website, which is salonautomontreal.com. So thank you very much and look forward to seeing you here.